The battle for big business is on. Today, teams Trump and Biden made dueling campaign pitches to the Business Roundtable, an influential group of CEOs. Donald Trump promised corporate tax cuts if he wins, while the Biden White House touted the economic recovery from the pandemic and urged CEOs not to take political stability for granted. Ron Insana is here. He's a CNBC senior analyst and the CEO of IFI AI. He has been a business reporter for 40 years. He celebrated his anniversary just 2 days ago. And CNN political finance reporter Brian Schwartz is here. Brian, you've been reporting on this meeting all day. Give us the Trump side first. What'd you learn?
At Trump's side, it was basically a pitch to about 80 CEOs today. And the idea was that, Trump basically said if he's elected, there's going to be a 20% corporate tax rate drop from the 21% federal rate. He's talking about slashing the income tax. He's talking about broad strokes, not many details on this part, which is really key, cutting back on business regulations. He did not go into too many details, and that's important in terms of what he did not say, did not get into what that meant. And that was really the key from him. And it was a stark contrast to kind of what you just mentioned before with what Jeff Zients, who's the chief of staff to President Biden, said to the crowd there as well.
We'll get to him in a second. Sure. And let's be clear, even when Trump did the big tax cut when he was president and knocked it down to 21%, CEOs weren't even looking for that. They only said, let's get 28. And of course, the sweet sound of deregulation, it's what they all want to hear. But Ron, my question to you is, we heard a lot of pushback from folks saying these CEOs shouldn't attend the meeting. Donald Trump is a convicted felon. But come on.
He might be president.
He might be president. No one in that room is publicly endorsing him. And the BRT hosts the nominees they have for decades.
Yeah, I think it's unfair to criticize a group of businessmen who know potentially where their bread might be buttered. I don't want to be that crude about it. But look, if he is going to be president of the United States, they are going to have to interact with him for another 4 years. So it is in their best interest to at least attend, whether or not they agree with it, whether or not they want that 1 percentage point reduction in the tax rate, which, by the way, they could get with some additional deduction somewhere else. It's not that hard to do.
But they
do
are
want
expiring
deregulation.
in the next 2 years.
They are expiring in the next 2 years. But if they are extended, they will cost another $4.9 trillion after the Trump administration added $7 trillion to the national debt in a 4-year period.
I'm pretty sure Republicans used to care about the deficit.
They used to.
Let's talk about Jeff Zients, the president's chief of staff, who was there, who actually has very deep relationships with many of the CEOs in that room. He comes from the business community. Yes. Because the president could not be there because he's at the G7. We know that as the days pass, former President Trump will likely try to spin this. I was the guy they met with. They're there backing me. That wasn't the case. What does Zients tell them?
Well, someone who was familiar with what he said, it was much more forward-looking. It was talking about the idea that if there's another 4 years of Joe Biden, you're not going to see what Trump has also teed up for if he's president, no mass deportations, right? You're not going to have this kind of strict trade war that Trump is saying will happen if he becomes president. Again, much more forward, much more kind of a positive remarks to these CEOs, in contrast with Trump, which is, well, basically, the 4 years of me you're going to have again. Thus was all those years ago. So again, it really is fascinating to see how these two people presented themselves to these CEOs. And if you're Jeff Zients, you have to be thinking, you don't necessarily, of course, or if you're Trump, you don't really need their money, but it's not bad to have some of these CEOs in your corner going forward.
And you'd like to have their money and the massive influence that they have. I know corporate America is not a monolith, right? I know the corporate tax cut is great. The idea of deregulation is delicious. But why don't we hear from more business leaders talking about how strong the economy has been, how good it's been under President Biden? I mean, look at how the stock market's performing, for goodness' sake.
Well, it's not just the stock market. I mean, the economy's fine. Inflation's coming down. Household net worth has exceeded $160 trillion. That is an all-time high. For all the concerns about deregulation, we produce more oil than any other country on earth. 13.5 million barrels per day, more natural gas than any other country on earth. And you have, banks that are soundly regulated that are doing quite well in this environment. And so I don't know what the argument for further deregulation from this point would be, given
they just think Lina Khan is a thorn in their side and they don't want to hear from her.
At the Federal Trade Commission, talking about preventing mergers from taking place. It's such a small part of the economy, M&A, if you will, put it in business terms. I think, look, you could talk about deregulating the oil industry and letting methane flare into the atmosphere, which is something Donald Trump did and Joe Biden rolled back and President Obama had in place before that. You can talk about all those different things. Most of them were not that good for the environment and weren't that great for the economy.
Bingo. People always say, like, oh, well, we want a strong economy, or you're going to care about the environment. Yeah. They are intertwined. Trump might give them a tax cut, but he pitched another idea today that was bananas. OK, CNBC is reporting that he floated the idea of eliminating U.S. income tax and replacing it with tariffs on imports. Can we just start with talking how this would even work?
So first of all, we launch a global trade war because you get retaliatory tariffs from every other country on the planet.
Who gave him this idea? Peter Navarro from inside jail?
Or Bob Lighthizer, could have been somebody like that, who was a former trade representative in prior administrations. But look, we import $3.8 trillion worth of goods. We take in $2.5 trillion in revenue from individual income taxes. So do the math. You'd have to basically almost put 100% tariffs on all imported goods coming to the United States, which would exacerbate inflation, launch a global trade war, possibly spark a recession or worse. It'd be a rough spot to be in.
It's not going to happen. I mean, let's just say what it is. I mean, maybe it could happen, but the likelihood of this actually being enacted, even if he does become president, seems so far-fetched.
But it's also just a dumb idea.
Well, that's what I mean. It gets to a point where, listen, you could debate,
well, there's that.
Yeah, but you could debate, but that's kind of where I'm going with this. I mean, you could debate the merits of it really another day. But the point of this is any rational economic advisor, whoever he surrounds himself with, again, I don't think they're going to say, hey, let's roll with this plan. Okay. I don't care where they're coming from on this.
There's a two-pronged problem. Number one, the president has unilateral authority for all intents and purposes to impose tariffs. He does not have the authority to alter the income tax because he doesn't have constitutional authority or power of the purse.